You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and here we talk about building, growing, and monetizing your online platform. We talk about taking your passion, turning it into a platform, and letting that become your ultimate paycheck. And we have a lot of fun doing that. We were just talking with our members club. They are live here on the call, live on the podcast here with me. And we were just discussing some of our wins and some of our goals and some of the things that are working with our individual platforms, and even some of the monthly challenges that we're doing this month as we're trying to promote one another's platforms and really get word out of some of the unique and fun things that each of us is doing. So we have a lot of fun there. We'd encourage you to stop by platformlaunchers.com at some point and check out our members club, because we'd love to invite you to be part of the group. If you're looking to build an online platform, we'd love to meet you, and we'd love to partner together with you. And this week for the podcast, I just mentioned this to our members club. We are talking, a lot of times I get practical. I try to be a practical person, and I think a lot of my writing and a lot of my speaking tends to be practical in nature, and that's fine. I like doing that. I think it's got its purpose and its point, and even what I'm about to share, I think is in many respects pretty practical. But I want to take a different approach this week, and I want to share with you a mindset shift that I personally experienced that I hope will be an encouragement to you. It was something that I happened to notice just kind of along the way, and it wasn't exactly something that I was realizing was fully taking place until it took place, and it was a very gradual thing. So all that build up to say, I have a little story for you, and just a discussion of a mindset shift that I experienced that I just want to share, and I hope it helps you in a little bit. But I have to set this up. I have to give a little context to what I'm talking about, and it kind of starts back in the year 2007. So just think back 16 years ago, back to 2007. And during that year, I was driving a car that I really enjoyed, but it was very bad on gas. I don't know if you're familiar with the Toyota FJ Cruiser, but they had just come out with those. I thought it was a really cool car. I bought one. It was terrible on gas. It got between 12 to 16 miles per gallon, and it burned through gas so quickly. I liked the car, but it just wasn't very friendly on my wallet. And that was also a season, if you remember, when gas prices started dramatically increasing. And I have to tell you, just related to my own personal life at that time, I was in no position to absorb that expense. My finances were extremely tight. My wife and I, we have 4 children. They were young children at that time. Our income at the time was very modest. And if I'm honest with you, if I'm confessional with you here, we had not at that season of our life done a very good job of preparing for emergency or unforeseen expenses. I don't know that we necessarily had the margin to do so, but even if we did, we weren't really thinking that way for a while. And so whenever I would need to fill that FJ Cruiser with gas, I would stare at that gas pump with absolute dread. I would watch those numbers tick up, and I would stare at it with absolute dread and just, practically, I just like wish that it would stop, just wish that those numbers would stop spinning. And I remember thinking, the cost that I was incurring just to drive, which is one of the most basic things that we do here in American society, it was very uncomfortable for me. And because it took so much energy at that time just for me to meet my basic needs, I noticed that my ability to dream about bigger things, it was being hindered. So when so much of your mental energy is being spent focused on basic things, it does have a negative impact on your ability to dream. Now let's fast forward to present day. Let's fast forward 16 years in this time machine. And I will admit to you that things feel drastically different at this season. And it all dawned on me just a few months ago. I had stopped at a gas station. I filled my tank, and then I drove off. And a few minutes down the road, I was just kind of thinking about the experience at the gas station, and it occurred to me that I had no idea how much I had just spent at that gas station. I had no idea how much that visit to that station cost me. I did not look at the fuel pump when I was finished, when I drove away. I didn't look at it. I didn't even think about it. And even though gas prices continue to rise, what I've noticed is that my mind isn't still locked in that fearful reactive spot that it happened to be in back in 2007. And what I've learned over the years is the value of being proactive, prepared, and forward thinking. Now, I'm going to elaborate on that in a second, but those are three phrases I want you to keep in mind: proactive, prepared, and forward thinking. Now, if you listen to my podcasts, or if you read my books or visit my blog, any of those things, I'm guessing you've also been doing some dreaming of your own. I don't think that you would utilize the content that I create if you weren't also a dreamer like I am. And I would suspect that odds are you're thinking a lot about what it would look like for you to develop a successful message-based online platform that allows you to communicate your passion while also earning a paycheck. I would assume that that occupies some of your thinking, maybe a lot of your thinking. And I'll tell you, that's a great aspiration. And the content that I'm creating is meant to help you get there. That's my goal with Platform Launchers, to help others understand what it looks like to build and grow and monetize a message-based online platform. But if you're in that spot that I was in, where you're still staring at the gas pump in dread every time you fill up, the mental energy you're devoting to your basic needs is going to compete with your ability to dream about bigger things. It's just how life goes. If you're highly focused on meeting the basics, it does compete with your ability to dream. And so for you to get to the next level of what you're building, you're going to need to create some margin in your life. Now, think about that word for just a second: margin. Picture a sheet of paper and the margin going around it, right? You need to have some extra space. You need to create some margin in your life and in your thinking and even in your personal finances so that you'll feel comfortable taking the next step. And what I'm going to suggest to you next, I hope you hear from me because I mean this, but what I'm suggesting to you is this: it's time to make your success an intentional part of your budget. Make succeeding an intentional part of your budget. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, investing in your success means that you're going to be making intentional choices to prioritize your personal and your professional growth. And I think that there are a few things that we could all be doing to help us get there. But I think we need to recognize that it's not going to happen on accident. And it's not going to happen if we don't leave ourselves the margin to actually daydream and start thinking about things on a bigger level. So it's time to start making your success an intentional part of your budget: how you budget your finances, how you budget your time, things like that. Now, from mindset here, I want to transition into getting a little bit practical, but let me suggest several ways to begin making your success an intentional part of your budget or what you prioritize. And the first thing is, I want to encourage you to start with your goals. And there's a certain way I'd like to encourage you to do this. I find this very helpful. I actually keep a notebook that helps me do this, but I would like to encourage you to take some time to get away to a quiet place with a pen and notebook. And the reason I'm saying a pen and notebook, even though that sounds old school, even though I know you have a note-taking app on your iPhone, your iPad, your computer, those things can distract you with other notifications. Take some time to get away to a quiet place with a pen and notebook. One of my favorite places to do this is Lake Luxembourg in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. I'll go and I'll park my car on the parking area that's right outside where everybody docks their boats. And I'll sit there in complete silence and I'll look out over the water and I'll have a notebook and I'll have a pen. And I do some thinking and I do some dreaming and I start with my goals. And what I want to encourage you to do is start with your goals, get a pen, get a notebook, go to a quiet place and give some dedicated thought to where you're trying to go next, your overall picture, your overall vision, and write out just a few specific measurable goals that align with your values and your aspirations. So start with those goals so you know what you're trying to aim for. And you need to get yourself in a spot where you allow yourself to dream again, where you allow yourself to start thinking big. Second thing I want to encourage you to do when it comes to this idea of making intentional investments in your overall success is invest in your learning. So when you think about where those investments need to go, invest in your learning. We are so blessed to live in the information age. Having had a taste of this era of history, I think it would be very difficult for me to live in another era of history where it might not have been quite as easy to get information. But we are blessed to live in the information age. It has its good points, it has its bad points, but the easy access we have to information is truly a blessing. Good information is so plentiful to us that it's actually easy to overlook. It's very easy to take it for granted because we can get it so easily. And I want to encourage you to invest in your learning by identifying some podcasts, some blogs, and some online courses that are produced by people who are just several steps ahead of you. They don't have to be way ahead of you, but at least a few steps ahead of you so that you could be listening to their stories and observing their practices and start asking the question, what did they do to get where they are? And and this is one of my favorite questions to ask, if they had to start all over again, where would they begin? So invest in your learning. That's an intentional investment that's worth making. A third thing I want to suggest, if you feel like you've been struggling to find some margin, this is something I very much had to do. In 2007 was a year where I really started to do this in a major way. By the way, I actually sold that FJ Cruiser. I only had it for a year. I sold it in 2007 so that I could do what I'm about to suggest here in point number 3. But that's this: trim the fat from your budget so you can allocate those resources to what you want to build instead of using those resources toward expenses that are unnecessary. I am certain that if you look closely at your budget or where your money is going, you can find unnecessary expenses that can be eliminated. I'm certain you could even identify a few nice things that you really enjoy but could live without. And if sacrificing some of these luxuries helps you fund the dream you're trying to build, future you is going to be grateful for the sacrifices that present day you chooses to make. You will definitely think it was worth it in the long run. By the way, I sold that FJ Cruiser and I bought a 2005 base model Honda Civic with crank windows, manual locks, no frills other than it did have AC. And I bought that in November of 2007 so I could trim the fat from my budget and start getting things on track. And by the way, can I tell you, we still own that Honda Civic. My daughter bought it off me. She's 17. She owns that car now. So that car is still part of our very, our family life every day. It's right out in front of my house right now, even as I speak. But trim the fat from your budget so you could allocate those resources toward what you want to build. Future you will be grateful that you choose to do that. Number 4, when we're talking about making intentional investments that lead to our growth, start networking. It's kind of fun. Brianna Henley and Phyllis Jenkins are 2 members of our members club. And I noticed some time ago that the 2 of them are just very, very effective networkers and connectors. They just work really hard to connect other people, or maybe they do it naturally. I don't know. Either way, they seem to be very intentional about it. And they spend every Tuesday trying to connect at least 10 people to each other, which is really cool. And they're encouraging other people to do that. And I just want to echo that thought by encouraging us to start networking. When you think about those intentional investments, make networking part of it. Surround yourself with people who understand what you're doing and what you're dreaming about. Let them speak into your situation. And when you're with them, make sure you do more listening than speaking. Do you ever meet somebody who does all the talking and you realize they're never going to learn anything because all they ever do is speak? When you're in the context of some of the people that you choose to network with, especially people that you feel like are a little bit further down the line than you, do more listening than speaking. And keep in mind, you're also going to need to allocate time to do this well. So don't be afraid to purge your schedule of some time wasters, just as you're purging your budget of money wasters. Purge your schedule of some time wasters so you could spend it actually doing some of this networking. I think that can help you find the margin you need on your calendar to begin spending time with people who inspire you. I've got 3 more things I want to suggest. Number 5 on my list is this: take some calculated risks. And what I mean by that is this: be willing to step out of your comfort zone and take the kind of risks that can actually lead to new opportunities and new growth. Now, I don't know, I mean, people pitch ideas to me all the time. They talk about all sorts of ideas, things they're working on. with their online platforms or their entrepreneurial message-based businesses. And I love hearing those things. And here's the thing. I don't know if your new idea is going to work, and neither do you. And that's okay. Most people, however, they choose to live reactively to whatever happens around them. But people who take calculated risks are typically the kind of people who understand the value of being proactive. So I want to encourage you to take some calculated risks, even though you don't know how your ideas are going to work out. Maybe they work out great, or maybe you learn something that you could apply at a future date. Either way, give yourself the permission to take some calculated risks. It's usually in those contexts that we learn valuable things and end up producing something of value. All right, number 6 on my list is this, similar to networking, but not exactly the same. Find a mentor or two. So use some of the financial margin and some of the time margin that you create to invest in direct mentorship from people you admire. I will tell you that one of my largest single yearly expenses for the past 3 years has been purposely paying to get on the radar of people that I want to learn from. People that I pay them for their time because I want them to mentor me in their ideas, people that I admire their success. Sometimes when I've paid for mentorship, I've also been asked, hey, what do you hope to gain from this experience? That's oftentimes what a mentor will ask you when you pay for coaching or mentorship in some other way. What do you hope to gain from this experience? And I'll tell you what, at this point, my standard answer is this. I don't actually know. I don't know what I'm going to get from this. All I know is that I always learn something that's either helpful or unexpected when I spend time around successful people. So don't be afraid to pay for a mentor or two. Find them. And if you can't afford that, read their books, listen to their podcasts. Their content is out there. And then number 7 is this, and it kind of falls, again, it's pretty similar to this idea of taking calculated risks. But number 7 on my list is this, don't be afraid to fail. Failure is a natural part of this journey to success. Use your setbacks and your opportunities to learn and grow. And I'll tell you what, and you already know this, but most of the successful people that I know, they give themselves permission to fail without beating themselves up about it. They don't beat themselves up about it. Or if they do beat themselves up about it, it's for like 5 minutes and they get over it very quickly. Most of the unproductive or unsuccessful people I know, they end up convincing themselves that everything they deliver needs to be perfect on the first try. That is very unrealistic. And for that reason, most of them tend to neglect launching what they're actually claiming to want to build because they use up their time trying to perfect something that hasn't even been tested on the market yet. And I want to encourage you, one of our members earlier, John Beakey, was telling us about a new podcast that he's launching, and he just recorded the first episode. And he said, it's first episode. It's not very refined. And our response to that was, you know what? So what? Awesome job on launching that. Don't be afraid of a messy launch. A messy launch is actually better than never launching at all. They always say it's easier to turn a car when it's moving. You want to get what you're trying to build in motion. You could always refine it later and you could perfect it later, but don't try and perfect it before you even bring it to the light of day, because it's kind of nice to make your mistakes while your audience is small. So make your mistakes while your audience is small. Let them help you refine it. Don't be afraid to fail, and get that thing launched, even if it's a bit messy when you first launch it. Now, let me wrap this up. If you are still staring at the gas pump, I hope that you're ready for the mindset shift that can take your life from reactivity to proactivity. And what I mean by that is this: you don't have to remain a victim to the circumstances that surround you. That's an unhealthy way to think about life. You do not have to remain a victim to the circumstances that surround you. You actually have the capacity to invest in and help shape your day-to-day circumstances. You do not need to remain as someone who, in my analogy, is staring at the gas pump and watching those numbers spin and looking at it with dread. You can work toward that changing. It's time to be proactive. It's time to be prepared. It's time to be forward thinking. It's time to make your success an intentional part of your personal budget. So give yourself permission to start prioritizing your personal growth and your professional growth. think it's going to go a long way toward preventing you from feeling stuck in the rut of inactivity. And I want to offer one final thing before we wrap up for this week. And I've mentioned this before, but if you're a new listener or if you haven't taken advantage of this yet, I actually have a tool that we give away free at platformlaunchers.com that I hope you'll utilize. And it's a tool that I think can help you get unstuck if you've been feeling unproductive and not feeling like you're moving in a direction that you want to go in. We have a 21-day platform development planning guide, and it's free at platformlaunchers.com. You'll see it right on the homepage. You can just download it right from the page there. But that planning guide will help you figure out over the course of a 3-week period what your online platform should look like, what you should talk about, how you should structure it, how you should build it, all of that. And again, that's free at platformlaunchers.com. I hope you'll take advantage of it and that it helps you get unstuck if you've been feeling like you are stuck. If you feel like you care a little too much about those numbers spinning on the gas pump, I think maybe it's time to kind of have a mindset shift. I went through it. I see things a little bit differently now. I'm willing to take a little bit more chances, a little more risk in my life. I have a higher risk tolerance at this point now, I guess I would say. But I think part of it is also because I've budgeted for it. I've created some margin. And when I say budget, I'm not just talking about finances. I'm talking about time budgeting and financial budgeting and all of those things. And I want to help you get there as well. So stop staring at the gas pump. Get the planning guide we've got at platformlaunchers.com, and let's hear some of those successes that you end up experiencing as you build your online platform. And if there's any way we can help you, don't be afraid to reach out. You could reach out at platformlaunchers.com. You can even send me an email, john@platformlaunchers.com. I'd certainly love to hear from you. But that's it for us this week. Thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you again right here next time. Take care.